Hello, and thank you so much for tuning in to the Minisode of the Book Marketing Tips and Author Success Podcast. This is Penny Sansevieri and Amy Cornell, and Amy is going to run with this topic because she has some strong feelings about you have some strong feelings about this topic.
I know.
Why don't you go for it?
Yeah, most of our listeners probably just think we need lots of therapy. They're like, why can you just leave us like 10 minutes and just go,
That's actually not an
right. Apples and oranges.
That's a very accurate statement, Amy. We probably do.
Funny. Okay, so I want to just discuss how to pull in more series readers, because we actually do work with a lot of series authors, which is fabulous because writing a series is a lot of work. I have so much respect for people that write a series, because that is, talking about jumping in feet first,
Yeah.
Once you put that first one out there and you tell people it's a series, you're kind of stuck. So
yeah, absolutely.
And what I wanted to address is that, some series must be read in order. The story continues through each book. You'd be totally lost if you don't start with book one. So that is one situation. But there are other series that are written so books can technically be read out of order. So, maybe the main character is the same, but they take on, a lot of different situations, or maybe it's a cast of characters that kind of follows the same theme, but you really don't have to read them in order. And the way you promote these is pretty critical, the difference between the two types of series that you could potentially write. So if you have a series that needs to be read in order, I got to tell you, that's the presumption that readers make, honestly. So you're likely already letting people know that. Most people assume that if it's a series, they have to read it in order, but it really doesn't hurt to add a note to your description anyway that reminds people that, hey, these are the other books in this series. This is the reading order. Definitely that should go on your website, on your Author Central account. There's a great way to, let people know the series reading order. It's just a really great way to plug all the books as well. So, that's not you want to just not miss that opportunity to talk about all the books that you have. But if you write in a series where the books don't need to be read in order, you have to be really careful about not scaring away a lot of potential buyers by not making that clear enough. Because we see this happen a lot, because we do work with the authors that come to us and they say, I'm releasing book 4, for example. I find like some professional help marketing my series. And that's something that we drill down with them. Like, can these be read in order, or can these be read out of order? Because it really changes the way you pitch the book. Mm-hmm. The way you should present the book on Amazon with the, the description and even the subtitle in some cases, things like that. For example, Lee Child's Jack Reacher series, many of these don't have to be read in any sort of order. I mean, there are literally dozens of books with Jack Reacher, but it's very clear. One title, for example, is Persuader, a Jack Reacher novel. So yes, he's communicated that it's a Jack Reacher novel, but he very smartly did not indicate that it's book 4 or book 3, because once you start tying those numbers into it, Penny, that's where I really think you start subconsciously telling people that there's a certain way to do things,
Right. No, I completely agree with that.
So I think, when you start calling, I get it. If your books don't have to be read in order, just know that by putting book 4 in the title or making it very obvious that it's a certain number, 99.9% of readers are going to assume they should not buy that book until they've read 1 through 3.
Right.
And that is devastating, that kind of loss of a sale or misunderstanding if your series, in fact, can be read out of order. So if you write a series where the books can be read out of order and enjoyed out of order, title the book in a way that ties it to your series, but avoid pigeonholing yourself into a particular reading order where people will jump off the page. Because once they leave the page, you would hope they'd go check out book 1, but in the time it takes them to get there, they might realize like, oh, I need to order that other thing, or like, what's that? What did I have in my cart already? Like, what, what I mean? There's so many ways to get distracted and potentially miss that sale. So go a step further, just really think about how you're presenting the book, add it to the description, even let them know that it can be read out of order. You can still include the other books or a reference to the other books in the series, But I do think that this is a missed opportunity for a lot of series authors, and they don't realize that they're potentially losing a lot of sales by not clearly communicating what kind of series they've written.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good point, because a lot of times you may not, I mean, your book cover, sorry, apparently I can't talk today. Your book cover may say, book 2 in the whatever series, right? And I think that it's worth mentioning. I think it's worth capturing that audience to tell them, you can start with book 2, you can start with book 3, you can start with book 4, because there is enough, there isn't so much backstory that you miss huge portions of of what's going on because you didn't start with book 1. I love the idea of mentioning that in the book description too. I think that is such a missed opportunity.
Yes. Just letting them know from the get-go, this is a standalone novel with, mention the character's name if that's what it is, mention the world, in a lot of fantasy, sci-fi, a lot of that is based around a particular world. So just make that super clear. Like, assume you can't make it clear enough. How about that?
Well, but I think, and to that end, I think that you could also add it to, so we talk a lot, and we definitely want to do a separate show on Amazon Author Central, because we talk a lot about how you can add content to your Author Central page on, on these individual books. And I think it's worth mentioning. I think it's worth going into the the individual books and maybe listing the series and making a note at the start of that. These books can absolutely be read out of order, because, like you said, if it's worth mentioning, it's worth mentioning multiple times, because you never know where somebody's entry point is going to be on your book page. They may default to the reviews immediately, and having that piece, having that little snippet added on the back end through Author Central, I think is a really good idea.
Yep.
So
this is you. Commit to making those updates. Get really objective about how you're presenting your series. If you do have a series that can be read out of order, and I bet with a few tweaks, you might actually see an uptick of sales across the board versus, a lot of authors struggle with that, where sales drop off significantly, with each book, because it's just really hard to convince people otherwise. But being smart about how you present it could really help, change that around for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. Thank you, Amy, so much for coming up with the idea for this particular minisode. And thank you all for listening. We love your feedback. So please, our contact details are in the show notes. We love hearing your show ideas, what you think of the show, as well as leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Bye-bye.